Hi folks, and welcome to Pub.ink TV. I've got a special broadcast for you today for a couple of reasons. One, I'd like to tell you that I'm shooting from the Côte d'Or in the south central part of France. I came for a couple of days to spend here at a winery on the Côte d'Or with Isabelle and Didier Michel at Bel Air, Domaine de Bel Air. It's a beautiful place here. I wanted to take you on a tour earlier on Periscope, but it is pouring down raining here, so I'm hoping our connection stays good as well. But I also wanted to publicly thank Isabelle for letting me use her art studio here, which is an old wine cave, so it's just actually a really cool place. So I'm kind of excited to be coming to you from here, but my guest is coming to you from Miami, Florida. And his name is Dave Bricker. We're going to be talking with him in just a few seconds. And we're going to be talking about, well, he's going to end up demonstrating to you a tool that he's created for creating ebooks. But we're going to start out by talking about ebooks and the different formats, because this is going to become very important once we start talking about this type of tool that he's created, which is something new and most of you probably have not used before. And Dave's already given me a demo of it. I've played around with it a little bit, and I'm really excited to try it out a little bit more, and I'm really excited about what this tool can do. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dave Bricker. Hi Dave, how are you?
I'm great, Tony. Thank you for having me on. It's really a pleasure.
Well, I really appreciate you coming. I'm happy to have you here. So let me give you a little bit of an introduction to Dave. You're going to learn a lot more about him once he starts talking. But Dave I met him on LinkedIn, and I don't even remember how the conversation got to us connecting privately on LinkedIn, but I've been kind of fascinated with this guy because he seems to just do everything. He's an author of several books, and I'll have him tell you about a couple of the books that he's written and published. He is also a graphic designer, which means he can create his own covers, which a lot of us, I'm sure, are very envious of, Dave. And he's also the creator of this tool that we're going to be talking about in this broadcast, PubML, which is a tool that is going to help us create ebooks in a WordPress plugin that can be viewed in a web browser anywhere with a Wi-Fi connection, and they can have rich media in them, and he's going to demonstrate that for us. They can have audio, video, interactive maps. When he was showing me some of his books and the things they could do, I was just like, wow, that is so cool. And that's why I'm really excited about this. Dave is also the author of the blog, theworldsgreatestbook.com. And don't worry, any links that we tell you about here today in the broadcast, we will be typing those links out for you below the YouTube replay, which will also give you the link to the YouTube replay before we leave here today. So any links that we share with you, we're going to include them in the description below the YouTube video. It's one of the great things about Hangouts. As soon as we're done, it starts uploading a replay for us automatically. So anyway, back to Dave's blog, theworldsgreatestbook.com. This is a blog for writers, publishers, and book designers, and he's got over 100 articles on there, and he's close to 500,000 page views as well. Way to go, Dave. Good work. So Dave, the first thing I wanted to ask you about, why don't you tell us about a couple of the books that you've published? Tell us about your books. I think I see them behind you on the shelf there, some of them.
Well, the ones on the shelf behind me are my own books, and also books that I've produced for clients. I do a lot of work as an editor, as a publishing coach, and I like to help remarkable people tell remarkable stories. It's the greatest job in the world, and I love working with writers and helping to produce polished books. Not only polished writing, but polished in appearance. So it's something that's wonderful to be able to do. My own books, I'm working on book number 7 at this point. I started off designing covers and book interiors for someone who came to me, a novelist, And then it's just my nature. I thought, well, gee, after I did his third book, I thought I could do this. And so I wrote my first book, and based on a friend's true stories. And that developed into 3 novels, actually. And I learned a lot doing that, as we all do when we write our first and second books and things like that. I started where everybody else here has started or is starting out. And then when I decided, I thought I knew what I was talking about, I decided I'd try a little nonfiction book called The 1 Hour Guide to Self-Publishing. And at this point, I would discourage anybody from buying it because it's out of date and needs to be revised. So as much as I'd like to pitch it, it was a nice little book, but there are some things in there that need to be updated.
Things go out of date rather quickly in this business, though, don't they?
So that's that. But that's what's kicked off the blog. That's what kicked off the world's greatest book.com. It was originally 1hourselfpub.com. And then the book got bigger than the blog. The blog got bigger than the book. And from there, it was, there must be 500,000 words on the blog at this point compared to this little tiny book. The 2 most recent things I've published were The Blue Monk, which was the name of my sailboat when I was in my 20s, and it's a memoir of being young and carefree on a small boat in the Bahamas and sailing across to Europe with a friend. And I'll show you more about that particular book because that's the book I used as the demo book for PubML. So as an ebook, it has 350 video clips, 200 photos, 80 Google Maps, 100 pop-up footnotes, and none of this stuff clutters the text. So it's a new take on rich media ebooks, which we'll get into. And then through my editing work, the last thing I've published, it's a fun book, and you can actually read it on my website if you dig back through the blog post. It's posted in PubML format, but it's called The Writer's Guide to Powerful Prose. And it's all about recognizing the patterns in your writing that make you sound like all of the people who are absent-mindedly using the same patterns. So it's things that I found even in the work of some very accomplished writers. And of course, I'm able to do that because I had my own butt kicked by some very accomplished editors, and so there's no ego in that. I'm passing along what I've learned, but it's the kind of book you read it in an hour and you're a better writer.
Right.
It teaches you to see patterns.
Okay, so Dave, thanks for telling us about your books. I want to talk to you about ebooks, and I want to start off kind of general, asking you, and I know this seems like a really obvious question, but one of the things that when I'm talking to people who are wanting to start publishing is they don't really have a full idea of what an ebook is. And sometimes they don't realize they don't know what it is exactly. Sometimes they do, and they ask questions like, well, what's the difference between an EPUB, or why can't I get my EPUB onto my Kindle, or, so I wanted to ask you to help us understand what exactly is an ebook and in its different formats.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question because in its full sense, it's like asking what is art. So let's start with a very specific definition of what an ebook is.
Okay.
You could take a book and you could dump it onto a single HTML page. And you can read books that way on Gutenberg.org. They've got millions of books converted to HTML, and they just scroll down the page like a big roll of paper towels with the book printed on it. And you could say, technically, that's an ebook. What I mean by an ebook is it's reflowable, paginated text. And what that means in English is that you've got a fixed page size, much like you do in Microsoft Word. When you fill up your A4 or 8.5 by 11 page or whatever that page is, what happens? It gets to the bottom and it flows to the next page. And an ebook should do the same thing. If you make the type bigger, it should flow into more pages. If you make the line spacing narrower, it should flow into fewer pages. So it's paginated in that you jump from a fixed page size to a fixed page size to a fixed page size. It's all the same layout, much like a Kindle screen or any other e-reader screen. You're not scrolling the text past the window. You're flowing the text into a fixed text area. That's what I call an ebook for our purposes of our discussion.
And so what would be the different formats that people would either be familiar with or maybe not familiar with?
There are really two to speak of, and they're closely related. There's the EPUB format, which was put together by the IDPF, the International Digital Publishing Foundation, as a standard. And essentially, it's a web page or a website. It's a bundle of HTML and CSS files, and I won't get any more technical than that for people who don't want to hear about code and technology. But it's a bundle of web files that govern the content and the formatting, and they are wrapped up in a package. As a matter of fact, you can take an EPUB file and change the .epub to a .zip, and you can open it up and see all of the files. It's really just a zip file containing web files, but it's intended to be consumed by an e-reader device. So you've got the EPUB file, and then Kindle has the .mobi file, which is really just their own proprietary wrapper for an EPUB file. It's just Amazon says, we're going to take your EPUB file and we're going to wrap our own code around it so that it can only be read on a Kindle. There is an EPUB 3 format, which offers a lot more features than the more common EPUB 2, and Amazon has a KF8 format, which is sort of their equivalent. But really, deep down inside under the hood, they're all the same thing. And Terry, you've frozen on me. I'm going to wait just one moment. Are you back? Okay.
I'm back. I told you I might have some technical difficulties with the weather, so I'm glad that I didn't lose you.
Yeah, I'm still here, and I don't know how much of that everybody caught. I assume that I stayed up and running.
I think so, because it allowed me just to join back into the Google Hangout. So if you're just joining us, this will be a nice time for a little pause here. I'm Tony Rosser of Pub.ink, and I'm talking today with Dave Bricker, who is an author, a book designer, and also the creator of PubML, which is a tool that he's going to demonstrate for us in a little bit for creating ebooks that can have rich media in them if you decide to do that. It's a pretty cool tool. And so we're on Google Hangouts today, and I let everyone know at the beginning of the broadcast, assuming that it didn't get cut and we're not going to have to do parts 1 and part 2 of YouTube with me going off air there, that we're having a big storm here today where I am, and that I might have some technical difficulties. So Dave was just talking to us about ebooks, what they actually are and what the different formats are. And that's when I kind of dropped out, Dave. Did you finish that discussion?
I pretty much finished. The only thing I'd say to continue that is if you create an EPUB file for your ebook, you can upload that EPUB file to Amazon's got what they call KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, and when you get an account there, it will convert your EPUB file to a .mobi file or whatever. So for all intents and purposes, publishers, author publishers really need to just find a way to produce an EPUB file to produce an ebook, a traditional ebook.
Well, that's a really good segue into what I want to talk about next, because publishing an EPUB for someone who's just starting out is not really obvious. And that's one of the reasons that I'm excited about this tool that you're going to show us today, not just because of the rich media, but that there's also an EPUB option, which I found a lot of authors who are just starting to do their own publishing, or people who are just creating their small publishing companies. You know, they publish on Kindle because it's easy, and it is. Amazon makes it very easy for us to upload books to their Kindle store, but it's a little more challenging to get to the EPUB. So what I wanted to ask you about is, I kind of wanted to talk about what I'll call e-reader wars, okay? So why is it that our Kindle file cannot be read on other devices, and why is it that our EPUB file can't be read on a Kindle device?
Well, actually, if you have a Kindle Fire, which is an Android device, you can install an e-reader client that will read EPUB files along with it. But basically, Amazon came along and said, we are the big bookstore, and we are going to develop our own proprietary format. And if you want to buy books from us and you want to catalog your books in our library, you will read them and buy them in our format. It's just a business move. Nook and Kobo and some of the other readers just use standard EPUB files. They're not dealing with the proprietary formats.
Yeah.
There you go.
You can hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Sorry, I told you I was in an uncontrolled environment today. One of the dogs of my winery friend just came in and I had to let her out. But an EPUB is an open format, right? Can you talk a little bit about what an open format is?
It's an open format, meaning that you can go to idpf.org, and if you really want to get bored, you can download all the specifications for writing an EPUB file, and you can develop your own software for reading it, for writing it. It's open to the world. Nobody owns that format. It's basically open source, public domain, do what you want with it.
And we can read an EPUB, as you were saying, on most every device except for the earlier Kindle devices.
That's correct.
Okay. And so the next thing I want to ask you about is, what are then the limitations of an EPUB or even a Kindle? Because here's the thing, we read a lot about, and of course I've worked with both of them, but people who maybe aren't as familiar with the formats, they hear about EPUB 2.0, they hear about EPUB 3.0, and with EPUB 3.0 you can do all of these extra things like add video and audio and interactivity and things like that. And yet when we go to any blog, including my own, where we talk about what kind of an EPUB should you be producing, we tell people, now be careful, you can include all of that, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to, that a reader is going to be able to view all of that. Why not?
Well, there are a lot of different highways that intersect at this very point. It's a good segue, and it really leads into why I decided to develop ebooks for the open web. But to answer your question, we've got the EPUB 2 format, which is very limited, but it basically gives you text, basic formatting, images, and it's pretty much what the industry standard is. Its advantages are that you don't need a lot of designer time, designer hours going into formatting the book. You dump it in, and the e-reader displays that what amounts to book data. You don't, in most cases, get web fonts and things like that. You just get this small subset. So Bill McCoy and the good folks over at the International Digital Publishing Foundation, the IDPF, worked very hard on the EPUB 3 format because they wanted to empower people to create what I call rich media ebooks. Video, interactivity. For example, you could have a quiz built in that would test you in a book. There's all sorts of things that are possible with EPUB 3, and they're marvelous. But what happened is that the e-reader device manufacturers and the e-reader software manufacturers, because many, actually the majority of ebooks are not read on a dedicated device. They're read on tablets and phones and computer screens and things like that. But all of these people support different subsets of the standard. And the quandary for publishers is that if they're going to produce a book that has all of these rich media features, they don't want to worry about which readers it's going to break on. Is it going to work? So even though EPUB 2 doesn't look all that great. It's functional. People are happy to take their Kindle on an airplane or wherever they want to go with it and read the books, and millions of people are buying those books. Publishers have invested millions of dollars in producing those files, and when you look at the potential pitfalls of producing a really spectacular EPUB 3 book, I don't see a lot of incentive for people to go there, unless, for example, it's an educational publisher that distributes its own reading software to students, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So go ahead, continue.
Well, and the other thing is just a matter of consistency. I had mentioned to you in our earlier conversation the browser wars of the 1990s, and I don't know how many of our viewers remember when websites used to say optimized for Netscape or optimized for Internet Explorer. And I used to build those sites way back then, and everybody that divided the internet, the development company, into these little camps. And it was a big pain to deal with. And finally, the World Wide Web Consortium, the WW3C, started standardizing things. They came out with CSS, and it's not a perfect standard. Different browsers show things differently, but it's much, much more consistent than it used to be. If you take an EPUB and you put it on a Nook or a Kobo, or you put it up in the Azardi reader, or there's a free extension for Google Chrome called Chromium. There is another reader, Adobe Editions, that's free. And everywhere you read that book, it's going to look different. The consistency is just non-existent.
It's one of the challenges for those of us who create EPUBs, even when we're just creating them in the EPUB 2.0 format. I know that I test all of my books on different devices, and sometimes it's frustrating because it's working on all of my test devices except for one where I'm not getting the page break after the title page, and then I have to go in and figure out what's wrong with the file. So from there, let's talk about then what is a web-based book? Because that's actually what you're really interested in and what we're going to be looking at a demonstration of next.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that pretty quickly. But I think that the web-based book to me has a couple of important justifications. And the first one to me is I think that the printing press was one of the most powerful things ever to happen to human freedom. And as soon as people got the power to publish, now we've seen that amplified and continued around the world. Everybody's got cell phones, so the media might be lying in the streets about what's happening, but you've got somebody with a cell phone pointing a camera and tweeting about what's happening. We have this power to publish. I think something as fundamental and powerful and important as a book should never be locked into either a proprietary standard or the limitations of proprietary reading devices. And one of the reasons I created a format for web-based books and I made it open source is that I want anybody to be able to download one of my books, substitute their own content, and yes, if you want to do it manually, you've got to get into the code and do it. But I think it's important that any homeless person can walk into a public library and publish their manifesto, and they can already do that on the web as a big long scrolling document or as a bunch of linked documents. Why not empower people to produce beautiful online books? So if the only thing it does is provide an alternative to the commercial traditional ways of doing it, I think it's got a small but important place in the publishing universe. We have to have the power to publish in the hands of people. Otherwise, we live in a very dangerous world. The other reason
Go ahead.
I wanted to go to web-based books is I got tired of this inconsistency, the aesthetic inconsistency. I wanted to use things like web fonts. I wanted to use things like YouTube, web-based content. When ebooks came out, part of their beauty was that you could read them on a ship or a plane or any number of places. But now we live in a wired world. How often are you not online? everybody's got a mobile device that's connected through 3G or 4G. We're wired all the time. So why not evolve the ebook to take advantage of some of that content? And my approach is a little bit of a hybrid. And finally, as a book designer, I do really meticulous work as a typesetter. I really have studied the old ways back when people worked with hot metal type. And I take a lot of pride and put a lot of care into formatting a book to make it beautiful. Go to any antique store and pop open a book that was printed in the 1920s and it just glows in the dark. It's hard to define what it is about that. And I want my ebooks to look like that. I don't want them to look like a data feed.
Okay, so let me ask you, first of all, let me back up a little bit to what you were saying for just to clarify for our viewers. What you're talking about with a web-based book is it's not like a blog where the page scrolls and scrolls. It's more like reading on an e-reader or an e-reading app where it looks like you're flipping pages. There's a set page, just like you gave the analogy earlier of a Word document where when you get to the end of the page, it flips, it goes to the next page. So what we're talking about with a web-based book is not just a web page where your text scrolls, but we're talking about where you have really defined pages, right? Which is one of the reasons that, as you're saying in your next point, that you can control the design, the fonts, the margins, the things like that, which is not quite the same when you're reading just a scrolling web page. But that kind of brings me to another question, which I think, it's not really a controversy, but there are maybe two different philosophies on designing books for electronic books or ebooks for readers. Some designers will, kind of crab over the fact that they don't have that control. Like you're saying, you're a book designer. You put a lot into designing that book and you want that control. And then I've heard others say, but the reader is becoming accustomed to making choices. When we open up our apps now, we can choose not only the brightness control, we can control what kind of paper we have behind it. We can choose our fonts. And if you embed fonts, which is what you now can do with ebooks that I don't think you could do before, then the reader tends to lose some control. What is your thought on that?
I think that there's something I call, I guess, the principle of controlled customization. I think readers want to control things like type size. You also have, I'm sure people remember MySpace, which gave everybody the ability to customize infinitely. And it rapidly deteriorated into this horrible, flashing Piccadilly Circus, Times Square light show with flashing images. And it became just a horrible design abortion. And it was fascinating to me that Facebook, with the blue uniform that gives you very little customization, now you can customize your header graphic, but it really looks the same for everybody. And that took over and remains king. So there are areas where you want to allow people to customize the reading experience, but then there are also areas where you want to be able to present yourself with the typefaces and type sizes and layouts and things that represent the tone of your book.
Well, on that note, why don't you take us into the demo and start showing us what a web book looks like, particularly one that you've created with this tool, PubML. Can you do that?
I can certainly do that. Let me get my screen sharing going here. And let's see.
While you're doing that, for those of you who are just joining us, I'm Tony Rosaire from Pub.ink, and I'm talking today with Dave Bricker, who is an author and a book designer, a graphic artist, but he also is the creator of PubML, which is this new tool for creating ebooks that can be viewed on the web, but still look like they're in a page of a book. Okay, so Dave's continuing here. Dave's going to give us a demo now.
All right. Are you able to see my screen all right? Because I'm in a different tab. I don't see you.
I am.
Okay. So what you see here is thebluemonkbook.com. The book is a website, and it doesn't connect to any databases or use any PHP. It's a self-running archive I just dropped on a web server. And so you'll notice that it's got the dimensions of the standard book. It has a custom background, and I'm just going to click to the right of it. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to use my arrow keys here. I can scroll through. And what I've tried to do is create a book that delivers an experience that is much more like an actual book. I've got the page dimensions, my 6x9 book. Now, I'll show you one feature that I thought about, which is Footnotes. This is a book which has a lot of marine terminology in it. So you'll notice here, I don't know if you can see on your screen, but there's a dashed underline. And if you don't know what a mangrove is, which somebody from the tropics would know, I'm going to click on mangrove and I get a photo footnote. So every time you encounter port or starboard, if this was an actual printed book, and I'll click outside of that to click it to get out of it, the first time you encounter port or starboard, you're going to see that same footnote underlined. Whereas if you were in a print book, you wouldn't want to re-footnote over and over and over. So as I scroll through this book, I can go through here, and you'll notice, for example, that there are links with underlines. And for example, here I have that anchorage, and I can click on that, and an overlay opens up. And what anchorage? Here we have, loading up, a Google map. And in the center of it is, there's the anchorage and some of the various things I mentioned. And some of the maps are more zoomed in and more detailed. So that's one, one piece. If I go to this one, derelicts, here what you'll see is I've got four videos, which I'm not going to use up a lot of bandwidth playing the videos, but I can switch between them and load videos from a YouTube playlist, and just people who were there at the time. So what this does is it allows me to create links that contain any combination of images, either from your website or from a Flickr photo gallery, Google Maps, YouTube playlists, maps. So we got maps, playlists, maps, images, videos, and footnotes. I also have a settings panel here. You were talking about customization. Mm-hmm. So for example, the default is crimson text, but I have some fonts that are suitable for book design. I'm going to choose Old Standard. And now you're going to see that this book, when I close the settings panel, looks a lot like an old book that was published on a linotype machine, perhaps at the turn of the 20th century. So I can do that. I can change my line spacing. Let me open settings up again. I can change my paper color. So if I'm reading on a device that is, let me get that scroll bar.
Just to clarify, what you're doing right now, Dave, this is the user control. This is not creating the ebook, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
Exactly. This is the book itself. This is the web-based format. And I guess what I wanted to do is I wanted to give people the option. Here I can go to a white paper color if I'm on a black and white device, which I'm usually not, but perhaps somebody would be. Change my paper color, change my background, change my typeface, change my line spacing. If perhaps an older person, watch the page number change. Did you see it jump to 20? Maybe an older person wants larger type, so they can go there. And now this chapter, we're now on page 7 out of 20. If I go back in my settings to small type, you'll see there's now 11 pages in this chapter, so it adjusts dynamically. The layout is based on ancient principles of page layout, and I've got my running heads, and I've got my page numbers and all of this. My table of contents is right up here, and I've got 2 layers of hierarchy here. So for example, you'll see this is all front matter, then I've got voyage the first and voyage the second. So these are all outlined. And I've added some custom tabs. There's a help tab that tells you what to do if you're staring at the book and don't feel like clicking around to figure out how it works. A little treatise on web books, how you can own this book and where you can buy it. There's an Amazon link and a Barnes and Noble link and things like that. So in a nutshell, this is a web-based ebook. Let me show you briefly the same thing in a different context. These are some friends and clients of mine who, they're wonderful people, George Walter and Barbie Taylor. And they have a fantastic love story, which I edited and produced. And wonderful, eccentric people. They live in a different country every year. If you want to taste a sample of the book, they have a page here. And what you'll see is here on their blog, which is honeyimhome.com, you actually have the book embedded. And you can click that book to read. And let's see what happens. I'm getting my spinning beach ball. Here we go.
Did you do the art for this one?
I did not do the illustration. We hired a professional illustrator for this cover. It was just for what they wanted to do. It was the right thing. But you can see at least the front half of the cover. There's your contents. And here you're actually able to read their book. Same thing right there in the blog post. So it's the same thing. And then, of course, you've got the ability when you first launch it, there's those little arrows. You can expand that to full screen. So that's another sample. You'll find if you join my mailing list, I have this book I created. It's a little ebook. It's short. Writing for Robots and Readers, an Author's Guide to Search Engine Optimization. And so for people who join my mailing list, they get referred to this page, and that's sort of the incentive to give me your email address so I can send you all sorts of cool articles and things.
Oh,
so
go join your email list now.
Exactly. So same thing. It just allows me to embed the book. And here's the actual content that you would find in the book. And I'm not going to load it here because I don't want to waste time demonstrating the same thing over and over. But this is the concept. You can not only put a book as a standalone piece on the web, but you can put this ebook inside a WordPress post or page, and you can put it, in this case, it's not behind a paywall, but it's on a password protected page. You could easily put it behind a paywall or make it available to members who had certain access. So it is possible to sell these books in just as you could sell any other ebook through Amazon or something like that.
You answered the next question I was going to ask you. Speaking of WordPress, but before I get to that, I noticed something in your books that you had these fancy drop caps, which is something that if I'm reading on an e-reader, whether I put the drop cap in or not, as a designer, I may or may not see that on my e-reader. You're able to see these on the web. Why is that?
Because I'm able to take advantage of all of the many things that the web has to offer. And any up-to-date browser will allow me to use web fonts. And I have 3 or 4 or 5 of them built into my publishing tool that you can select, so that if you want to use drop caps, you choose which style you want and drop them in there. And it's very easy. I'm not limited by what Kindle will support and what Nook will support. This is the open web. And I'm not worried about what some company is going to decide they want to show or not show today or tomorrow.
That's pretty cool. But what else I think is cool is the fact that you mentioned WordPress and that you could drop this into a WordPress site. But other than the other things that I've already mentioned that I thought were really awesome when you demonstrated this to me, is that the tool itself is a plugin that works in WordPress. Now my site, you might not know it from looking at it because I have it hosted, self-hosted on my own server, is a WordPress site. And so what you're saying then is that I could download this plugin, I could buy this plugin and plug it into my WordPress site. I could create this ebook myself using my WordPress site, and I could then post it to my WordPress site once the book is completed. And I could either give it for free or I could sell it.
That's absolutely correct.
Were you going to show us a little bit behind the scenes today, or are we going to?
I'll certainly do an overview, and I'll preface that overview by just saying another thing that has really frustrated me as a designer is that the tools that exist for creating EPUBs are very clunky. And I taught graphic design at a university for many years, and I got very familiar with the challenges of teaching left-brained concepts to right-brained people. And most people don't want to write code. They don't want to hassle with it. And this whole idea of creating an EPUB file is very difficult. There are some excellent tools like Sigil, S-I-G-I-L, which you can look up and download. And when I have to export EPUB files from InDesign, it's my go-to tool for taking them apart, breaking them into chapters, editing the table of contents, etc. But it's still very clunky for the average writer. And I wanted to create a tool where somebody could engage with the book visually. And let me show you how the PubML plugin works. Another aside is that for people unfamiliar with WordPress, there's two flavors of WordPress. There's WordPress.com and WordPress.org. You can get a free account on WordPress.com, which is an excellent place to start blogging. But if you have your own web host, your own account, you can install WordPress. And most quality hosts have an installer where you just click and go. You don't have to set up databases and things like that. But at this point, there are over 100 million WordPress sites out there. It's a free open source platform. And there's an army of people who have made add-ons called plugins that go along with WordPress. And I guess I've now joined that army. And these do everything from adding animated slideshows to helping you manage a mailing list to tracking your traffic and helping you with search engine optimization. And the WordPress plugin repository has tens of thousands of add-ons, the vast majority of which are free. And so you can, and then there are also places like Code Canyon and ThemeForest. You can download beautiful what's called themes that help you format your site, and themes and plugins. So there's a big commercial market. There's a free repository. It's a fantastic sort of technological ecosystem that empowers a lot of people. So because WordPress is the ideal platform for authors who want to promote themselves and their books, I thought that I would jumpstart, instead of creating dedicated software, I would use WordPress as a platform because people are used to writing and formatting text in WordPress. I'm going to turn my screen sharing back on.
Okay.
And give you a quick overview. We're in about 43 minutes now. And so I'll give you a 10-minute overview of the plugin. And then...
and for those of you who are watching, this is Dave Bricker. I'm Tony Rosaire from Pub.ink. I know a few of you just came on. You'll be able to go back and watch the whole replay on YouTube. But Dave is an author and the creator of PubML, which is, as he's explaining to us right now, is a WordPress plugin that allows you to create ebooks with rich media. And I also wanted to tell you guys, because he's about to show us the back end and how this tool works. He just did a demo of what the readers see on the front end. But he's telling you that this works in WordPress. And what I want to tell you guys is I am not a web designer, but I created my website. If you've been to it, pub.ink, pub.ink. It's not a bad looking website. It's not anything flashy or fantastic, but it's a professional looking website. And I did this on WordPress. Now, I don't have the free version. I have the version where I have a hosting company and I've installed WordPress. And like Dave said, my hosting company, which is HostGator, they just have a couple of buttons you push where you can actually install WordPress. And then WordPress, you just sign into the web, you put in your email and password, you sign in, And it's a really, really easy way to create a website. So if you're an author and you don't have a website yet, I definitely suggest that you check out WordPress. And then if you're thinking about creating your own ebooks, Dave's about to show us just a little short overview, and we'll talk about how you can get more information on how it really works in a few minutes. Okay, so continue, Dave.
So I'm inside WordPress, and many people viewing will recognize the WordPress dashboard, and I've got a bunch of different plugins associated with this particular site. I have my settings, and then I'm going to go to the My Books tab. The settings page gives you the last dozen or so posts from the world's greatest books, so I've got a little feed there. When I go to My Books, you'll see the list of books that have been created in the program here. And actually, here is where I created the Blue Monk book. And you'll notice I have one for PubML and one for EPUB, and that's because PubML will support all of the rich media features, and I didn't want those in the version for EPUB because nobody supports them. So this is kind of the light version, and I created two. Now, just to go through very quickly.
Wait 1 second. Can I bring something up that's a real advantage here that I want people to notice? That you've created the web version, but for those who still want to output the EPUB and upload it to iBooks, Note, Kobo, and even upload the EPUB version to Amazon, which they will then convert into their Kindle version, you can do that with this tool as well. Not just create an ebook, a web book, but you can create an EPUB as well.
Absolutely, because people may say, gee, Dave, the web books are beautiful, but I can't sell them on Amazon, and that's where my market is. So the business realities dictate that, I mean, people need tools not just to do what I would personally love to see them doing. People want to sell books. Amazon is the way to do that. iBooks is the way to do that. Barnes & Noble's the way to do that. And so I offer both options.
Awesome.
So you'll notice that each of these books has a link, and I'm going to go ahead. The first thing I'll show you is the edit metadata, which sounds really technical, but the metadata is the title, the publisher, things like that go with the book. And what I did is anyone who uses either Ingram Spark or Lightning Source will recognize this form, because all of the information here, the contributors, the description, and there's a place where I upload my cover. There's a short description for web search engines, because we are, a PubML book is basically a website. If you have an ISBN number for this, you can plug it in. I didn't bother with my web book, but I could. So all of this stuff is here. Standard features for entering, for starting a new book. You would enter it here. So if you click the new book, here's where you would upload your cover image, submit book metadata, and that creates the book. And now all of those links that we saw on that opening page, here's the table of contents. And I wanted people to be able to drag and drop and organize that table of contents as easily as possible. And of course, I'm waiting for things to load here. And you'll notice that this works very much like the WordPress menus system. The same way you organize your menus, if you want to change the order of your chapters or the hierarchy of your chapters, you simply drag and drop them. And this is also the place where you would go to edit a page. You can delete a chapter by clicking on the trash can, and you can edit a chapter by clicking on the pencil. And all of the titles have these terrible little puns. Here's my table of contents, for example. I can't help it, I'm a writer. So if I click on the pencil, you'll see the standard WordPress interface, or I can create a new text section or a new full page image. And you'll notice I've added some tools here to the standard WordPress palette of tools. And these are some things that allow me to do, for example, I can add a footnote. And I'm going to do this quickly, but if I wanted, for example, to add a footnote on the word down, I could click my little note icon, and here's a list of all of the footnotes that I've preloaded into the media section. And the same way works with the add media. If I have some grouping of, which I would create in this tab, the media tab. I have the ability to add a chapter ornament, a drop cap. If I want small caps, like you see here in the beginning, I'm returning, I can highlight that text and make it small caps. I can make a paragraph no indent. And the other thing, and this goes back to controlled customization, I could have given people their choice of typefaces and sizes, and a lot of people would mess that up. So it is customizable, but what you do is you create styles, and here they're grayed out. Let me highlight a piece of text here instead so that there's actually something to apply or remove a style. Headlines, subheadlines, and these are the basic ones that come with it. I've got one for signage, I've got one for handwriting, I've got one for computer text. They're all adjustable, but basically, and then body text is right here. That would be your default. And these are all definable elsewhere in the program. So you edit all of your chapters, you copy and paste them in from Word, and you format them. If you want to add a little ornament between chapters, you can do that. So that's all. It makes it real easy to just deal with your text in a very word processor style environment. Let's go to the styles. This is an area that I think is really a lot of fun. And what I've tried to do is build default styles that make it very, very easy for authors to customize the book. So for example, if you want to have custom backgrounds, here's the default background. And you can see I click on it and it actually shows here. Here's my custom background. And I can choose whether I want to tile that background, which would make it repeat over and over like a tile, or if I want it to be full screen. So I can choose a background or restore the existing default background. And you'll also notice these question marks. If you have any question about backgrounds, click on the question mark and it tells you right there. And styles, background, it gives you the relevant help. So there's pretty detailed onboard help. And then the same thing with the paper color. You can, I've uploaded a paper texture, and then I actually used the color picker here to match that texture, so that if for some reason the texture didn't load or it was slow to load, this beige color would load in behind the beige of my text. So it's all visual, it's all intuitive. Here's my layout. I'm no longer constrained by the size of my reading device. My book is a 6x9 inch book, and so I've taken popular sizes, and if you don't find one you like, you can customize it. Same thing with my page margins. I like this sort of classic book. If you want more of a trade style, you know, what you see in bookstores is, to me, that design was designed to accommodate, you know, printing the same book on fewer pages, but there it is. And you can customize your margins and things here too. It's all just a matter of clicking. You can adjust the running heads. You'll notice I've got an ornament. I can put that running head left, right, or center. And what do I want? In this case, I put the chapter title, but if you wanted the author or the book title, whatever you want in your running head at the top of the page, you put it in there. I'm going to go to Textiles last, but here's the drop cap options.
I like that one.
Right. Choose one, or just use the typeface from the body copy. And as you select these, you should even see them update here. So there's a nice visual interface that shows you how the book's going to look. Text ornaments. Here I created a custom one, a little sailboat for my book. So I've got a custom one, but if you wanted to choose a different ornament, if you wanted to divide your sections up, I've got a couple of them ready to go. You can choose your page numbers, left, center, right. Here I added their bold and italic. You'll notice here the font is Reader's Choice, and I could use the fonts that are built into my system, which is another section, but I want, whenever the reader chooses a font in the settings panel, I want that page number to change. So I've got this all set up. And this tab in the middle is my text styles. and I've got them labeled and linked here with a sample page at the top. And I can go in and I can create styles for any. So here's my body text. And again, I've chosen reader's choice for the body text. What size, what line height, first line indent of a paragraph? Do I want to justify? Do I want hyphenation? And then I've got the option, which is turned off for body text, but for headline, it's called runt control. And a runt is when you've got one line that hangs at the end of a paragraph, like this word text here. So if I turn runt control on, here I don't want hyphenation in a headline, but if there's only one word hanging over, it puts a non-breaking space between. So it forces two words to hang over. It just gives me better alignment. So there's a few things here to learn, a few settings, but it's all visual. And Footnotes navigation. At any time, I can preview my book so that if I don't want to have to export it while I'm working, it'll render a copy of the book right here on top of where I'm working, so I can look at where I was going, test my links, see what's happening with it, and then just keep working without having to export the final, without having to leave this environment. I'm not going to get into the media and the footnotes, but these are places where, well, just briefly, where if you want to add rich media to your book, and you can always put it directly in the pages. Mm-hmm. But here I have all of the links to videos, Flickr, maps, and images on the left-hand side. Let me scroll. So you can see there's a lot of media in this book. It's a big list. And if it gets too long, you can use the filters on the top to show only the type that you want. And if I click here on the left, Abaco Blue Hole Map, is, you see the check mark. That's one of the two items here. If I click this one, it should highlight the two elements on the left that are in that group. And this is where my links are made. So I can edit these and simply type in a link to any map, image, Flickr gallery, or YouTube video. Associate it with a group and link it right into my text. Footnotes work the same way. They're just like, footnotes are very much like a WordPress post, custom type of post. And if I go to navigation, these are the tabs at the top, and I can change their order. I can't, I can hide, but I can't delete the table of contents or the settings, but I can make my own custom tabs, as you see in the book here, and I can edit their content. So as I erase the boundary between a book and a website, people might use, you can make a whole website that was just a book with tabs on the top, and that's your option to do. So you've seen the preview. Here's the export, which will load in just a moment. It's a little slow because we've got the Google Hangout running and the video at the same time.
Right.
And finally, here's all my metadata. If something's incomplete, I've got a shortcut to come edit it. And if I want to download this PubML book, I can download it. If I want to download an EPUB, I can click and download it. It also gives me this shortcode here. And for people who don't know WordPress, if I take this shortcode and I paste it, copy and paste it into a WordPress post or page, it's going to embed that book in the page for me. So here I've got a complete set of visual tools for creating ebooks. And there's a few more things to it, but I think I'm going to save those for the more detailed overview. And what we'll actually do is build a short book on screen so that you can see the process. And we'll start with a few videos and photos, and we will start with a small Microsoft Word document and create a book from scratch on screen.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I want to let folks know I was just putting in a link into the chat. It's at, you can find this on one of my landing pages at my website, which is pub.ink, and then it's going to be /ebook dash or hyphen training, ebook training. Okay, pub.ink /ebook dash training. And so what Dave and I are what I've asked him if he would be willing to do is, because I wanted him to give a demo, but I knew that doing a complete training would be beyond the scope of this program. So I've asked him if he would give a free webinar, and he said yes. And so on November the 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, Dave is actually going to be doing a webinar training. It is free of charge. You just need to go to this link that I'm giving you, and I will also, on the YouTube replay, put the link down in the description below. So in case you miss it here, if you're watching on replay, this link will be down in the description below. It's pub.ink/ebook-training. And so that's going to be on November 2nd at 1 p.m. You just need to go. You need to register for that. I do need to tell you that when you register, you're going to get a confirmation email, and you need to go into your email and click that confirmation, because we do that for spam reasons. We don't want to be sending anyone anything that they haven't asked for, and we want to make sure that we're getting your okay, but we need your email address to be able to send you the link when it's ready for the actual webinar, so that you'll know where to go to watch the webinar, okay? So again, that link is pub.ink/ebook-training. And I will be putting that down below in the description on the YouTube replay. And the YouTube replay, by the way, in case you're watching right now and you can see the chat, I'm going to also type that into the chat for you. Hang on, my thing's moving a little slowly. While I'm doing that, Dave, can you let people know how they can get in touch with you? Talk again about and these links that you give me and this information. I'm also going to put this down below the YouTube replay in the description. But let people know how they can find you and how they can find this plugin as well.
Well, the plugin and information about the plugin are at PubML.com, and PubML is short for Publishing with HTML. PubML.com, and you can download the plugin there and read all sorts of too long justifications for its existence, and you can see samples of what EPUBs look like in various readers and all of that, and so on and so forth. You can read the Blue Monk on that website, and it's also at its own website, which is thebluemonkbook.com. And my contact information is freely available both on theworldsgreatestbook.com, and then I've got a personal portfolio site at davebricker.com. So I've got way too many websites, which I need to consolidate one day, but that's how it's come together.
I'm typing those into the chat now so that if folks are watching live, they can copy and paste those. If not, don't worry if you're watching the replay. I'm going to put all of these into the description below the YouTube replay. So if you're live and you're looking there on chat, you can see the first link, pub.ink, sorry, /ebook-training. That's where you're going to go to register for the free webinar that's next week, where Dave is actually going to walk you through step by step how to create an ebook using PubML, and how you can create either a web ebook or an EPUB. The next link there is the YouTube replay, so that if you're watching this live and maybe you missed the first part of it and you want to go back and watch the whole thing again, we've got this replay here, and that's the YouTube link. And there I've got the pubml.com link, so that if you want to go and take a look at this WordPress plugin. And then we've got some contact information for Dave. And don't forget that if you want to find me, I'm at pub.ink. So, Dave, I just want to thank you for coming on and having this conversation with us, but showing us this tool. And I really want to thank you for offering this free webinar, because I'm going to be there hosting it for you, but I'm actually going to be learning.
Well, that's great. And look, I always try to stand by to answer questions for anybody. And I want people to use it and use it well and get what they want out of it. You can also download the plugin and try it for free. It costs nothing to download and install, and you can do anything but preview or export a book. So if you want to set up a book and see how it works and see how the tools feel, it's all there and available to install.
So I should mention, you said you were willing to answer questions. I didn't ask if anyone has questions. Go ahead and type them into the chat. There's also a Q&A where you can put questions before the broadcast starts, but I don't have any questions from before it starts. But if you want to type something into the chat, if you're watching live, go ahead and do that. And Dave's going to stick around for a couple of minutes here and answer those. And while we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions, Dave, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about theworldsgreatestbook.com, because I think we might have some authors who are watching this as well.
It's one of these things. I just, as I mentioned at the beginning of our broadcast, I put it together to support this little tiny self-publishing book that I had written, and it's just far exceeded the book in scope. And it's just got articles about how not to get burned by, how publishing scams work. It's got a long series of articles about book typography. There's a book design basics. I just posted yesterday one about apostrophes and primes and quotation marks. So there's all sorts of typographic minutia that people who want to make good books will be interested in knowing about. There's some cover design articles, and then there's some articles about writing. So it's writing, it's publishing, it's book design. I'm going to be launching a whole section of archived Periscope broadcasts by people who talk about writing and publishing. I know, Tony, you're going to be part of that. So I'm just getting that page polished up to where I want it. I'm just trying to be a straight talk resource for
Speaking of Periscope, I don't know if you have a Periscope channel yet, but if you guys are interested in watching, following me on Periscope TV, it's Root11 eBooks is my handle, or maybe it's Pub.ink. I guess I should go look that up. I originally connected it to my Twitter account, which is Root11 eBooks, as you know, Dave. And I think I actually changed my Periscope channel to Pub.ink. So before I even tell you where that is, you can go look up both of them. You can find me on Twitter there as well. Do you have a Periscope channel yet?
No, not yet. This is one of the things also I've been gearing up toward, and it's just me. I want to be organized about it. I don't want to get on Periscope and talk about the weather. I want to get on Periscope and try to deliver something that's not too scripted, but that is quick and informative and useful. And
my first Periscope, I went live and I went, okay, guys, I'm just trying this thing out to see what it looks like. And I think I was on there for 10 seconds and I got right off. I just wanted to see what happened when I hit the start broadcasting button.
It's a fascinating medium, and it's a new medium. And for people who don't know about it, and I'm really new to it, just learning about it myself, but it gives you the ability to broadcast informal videos through your cell phone, through your mobile device. And people are using it to talk about all sorts of things. The videos get archived for 24 hours and then they're gone. But Periscope got 10 million followers in its first week, and it's growing. And I worry that pretty soon it's going to become so cluttered that it's going to, I don't know, we'll see where it goes. But right now it's an interesting new social media frontier. And if you present well and you've got something to say, you can get a lot of followers. It's owned by Twitter, so it ties into your Twitter followers. And
doesn't have anything to do with ebooks, but it does have to do with author promotion. So if you guys aren't on Periscope, I invite you to check us out there. Okay, Dave, so we're at the end of our time here. We've gone a little bit over, but that's fine. I told you we were going to talk until we were done. I want to thank you guys who are watching, our live viewers and also our replay viewers. I've got the links here for you in the chat if you're watching live. If you're watching via replay, you can scroll down below the YouTube replay and find all of the links that we shared with you here. And so, Dave, I hope you have a great day in Miami. It's evening here in the south of France, and so I'll be going to have dinner. I'm guessing that you'll be getting the rest of your work done this afternoon.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who attended this broadcast.
Okay, take care. See you guys next time on Pub.ink TV.